We are live.
Good morning and welcome to the Social Services Committee meeting for January 15th, 2025. We are going to begin the meeting with the election of the chair and the vice chair. At this time, we'll take any nominations there are for chair. Councillor Miller?
I will nominate Councillor Samwell.
Councillor Samwell, do you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, all those in favor? Councillor Samwell? And that carries. We'll go on to vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Yes, Councillor Bell.
I nominate Councillor Miller.
Councillor Miller, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I'd be honored to. Thank you.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, all those in favor? Excellent, that carries. Thank you. Just give us one moment to switch seats and then we'll begin the meeting.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
Yes, the roll has been taken.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest this morning for anything that's not appearing on the agenda? Seeing none, are there any items the committee would like separated for discussion purposes? Councillor Miller?
6.3, please.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
6.3.
6.3?
Yep.
Okay. And any other separations? Okay. All right, with that, could I get a mover and a seconder for everything that's not separated? Oh, yep. So Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Oakley. Thank you. And I'll call the vote on the items that are not separated.
The items that are subject to vote are item 6.1, the update on 1387 Colburn Street East, 6.2, annual update CMHC National Housing Co-investment funding for renovation, repair, and renewal, and 6.4, the minutes from September 4th. All those in favor? Carrie, thank you.
All right, and now we'll discuss the items that have been separated for discussion, which is 6.3. Councillor Miller, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. 6.3. So this is the annual update on the housing development. Always good information, especially for us at county as we're going into budget. So I just want to square a couple numbers up for us. And on page 7 of Mary's report, there's a couple tables. Table 1, affordable housing development progress, and then what's in the pipeline. And if I look at table 2 on page 7, I see for the county, we have final site 35, final site 35 to be determined. So that if I add 35 and 35, I get 70. But if I look at the money part of it, I get more than 70 units. For municipal build, we're looking at 93 units. And for nonprofits, we're looking at 94 units. So I'm just wondering why, if I look at table 2, it says 70 units to be determined, But if I look at the financials, that we're at 187, and I'm just wondering if maybe somebody could clarify that for me.
Good morning, Mary Musson, Senior Director of Community Services and Social Development. Through the chair, I can start with the clarification and then I'm going to ask the Director of Finance to finish up with the financials. For the table 2 on page 7, that is an estimate of the units that we are planning to build. So none of those units have been approved by Social Services Committee yet for development. So they have not gone through yet. This is the intended pipeline for development. The table is a rough estimate showing how many more units we will need to build to meet the goal of the municipal housing master plan of 506 municipally developed units. The table is fluid and it will be subject to change. So ideally, if the county could, we could build more units in the county, then that means we would have to develop less units in the city to meet the goals of the master plan.
Good morning. Through the chair, Judy Moore, Director of Finance for the City of Brantford. So from the financing side of things, when we look at those tables, we were really just looking at the population split between the city and the county, which currently is 72% for the city and then 28% for the county. So it was really just taking the cost of units that need to be developed in each of the municipalities and just kind of prorating it that way. So again, as Mary said, doesn't necessarily mean that all of the units need to be built in the city or the county. It'll be dependent on availability, but that's where the information in the financial charts came from.
Okay, thank you, staff, Madam Chair. And yeah, the numbers are kind of staggering, but it's a good refresher. Like I say, we're going into budget, so we will have a more in-depth talk on that. So thank you.
Councilor McCreary, go ahead, please.
Chair, thank you very much. We have a power line road identified as a site. Do we have a site secured for that, or is that yet to be determined, or is that something we can't talk about in open session?
Yeah, through the chair, the Power Line Road, that's one of the developments that the city is leading on Power Line Road. 2 acres has been set aside for affordable housing development by Housing and Homelessness Services.
And that's in lands that are currently owned by the corporation of the city of Brantford?
That is correct.
And now with respect to the TBD county properties, are we engaging the county of Brant government with respect to securing locations?
So through the chair, we have asked for any available space and unfortunately we don't have any available land identified. When it does become identified, we're more than happy to look at developing it.
Many years ago, I think Councillor Miller and I were on at the same time back then. We debated a location in the village of St. George. That was passed at this committee, but then it was defeated at City of Brantford Council, unfortunately. I wonder if the county reps might have a discussion with you, Mary, about whether or not that site may still be available and viable offline. Thank you.
Thank you. And go ahead, Councillor House, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, I had a question. Like when I think back to the original mayor's task force meetings and how much has been accomplished so far on the municipally funded sites, there's been a lot of great progress, but looking at the nonprofit side of our goals for both municipalities, I'm reading through page 8 of Mary's report. From staff's experience and what you see in other municipalities and what you may learn at provincial conferences, things like that. Is there anything else that either or both of our municipalities should be doing to try to encourage the nonprofit side of things? Because ultimately we're going to need that cooperation for us all to meet our goals without breaking both of our respective piggy banks. So just wonder if there's any extra thoughts on that beyond what's in the report.
So through the chair, not so much extra thoughts beyond what's in the report, but what we have heard in that meeting with various nonprofit organizations, and most recently, we did meet with representatives from Indwell this week. It's the difficulties in securing grant funding from various levels of government to actually develop. Usually, they are able to obtain partial grant funding and then trying to mortgage or debenture current assets. However, there's always a gap that is preventing nonprofits from being able to achieve development and start building more affordable housing. So some of the approaches the city has taken, which is included in the report, is helping subsidize through the tax revenues for additional housing development. So the tax revenue from 282 Stanley Street will help offset the operating costs for the 24 units that JC's is building at 32 Bridge Street over a 10-year period. So looking at innovative ways to help subsidize costs for nonprofits so that they can develop.
Follow up through Madam Chair, please.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for that, Mary. I guess my other question is, am I right in understanding that the city of Brantford has an incentive program through reductions in development charges for any developer, I assume, whether it's nonprofit or for profit, if they're doing affordable housing? And I was wondering I don't think that's something that the county of Brant has done yet. But I'm wondering if anyone from the city staff could speak to if that's been a successful initiative for the city.
So through the chair, yes, the city has a municipal bylaw, it's the Municipal Housing Facilities Agreement, and it is for private developers who are developing for-profit housing. If they are willing to enter into an agreement with the city for a 25-year period, they do get a development charge relief for any affordable units that do meet the definition of affordability. So that's keeping them at 80% of the CMHC average market rent for the duration of the agreement. And what we're finding is right now with the current economics, a lot of private developers are not able to enter into these agreements. But we do have that available to any private developer who wishes to build affordable housing.
All right. Thank you.
Councillor Bell, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Could somebody remind me of the commitments that were made when we signed our joint shared services agreement? Did we as city and county agree that we would pay for the share of the 506 units on a pro rata basis?
So through the chair, with the shared social services agreement that was completed in November of 2021, it was $15 million that was agreed to for capital contributions in that agreement.
But then does that, sorry, through the chair, does that then not conflict with what's in this report, which would indicate that the county has more to pay than the $15 million?
So through the chair, it does not conflict in the way that this report lays out how much more contributions will be required in order to achieve the goals of the Mayor's Housing Task Force and the Municipal Housing Master Plan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still not quite understanding what you're expecting then of the county. The county committed a certain amount of money, which we are standing by. And now I think you're asking us for more money that we didn't commit to in 2020. Is that correct?
So through the chair, we're not requesting the money right now. We're just laying out how much of a contribution would be required. That is up to the county to decide whether or not they are going to invest in more affordable housing development.
Okay.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to correct some misinformation. Since I chaired the Mayor's Housing Task Force jointly with Mayor Bailey, I think I've got a pretty good memory of it. And my memory of it was that the commitment was not to a dollar figure. The commitment was to a certain number of units, because we realized we had to construct the targeted goal of units in order to manage the housing list that applies to both the city and the county. And based on construction numbers as they were 4 or 5 years ago, we asked each municipality to make a commitment. So I would take issue. The commitment was not to a specific dollar amount. It was to building units. I mean, that's what this is all about. So I'm going to ask staff if you would please you haven't done a presentation, but I'm going to ask if you would do a presentation, if you don't mind, starting at table 4. And if you could explain to us and to the viewers what the current goals are. The goals are the same in terms of number of units, but what the cost will be to complete those units and how that's changed over time with inflation. How it is that the city is going to be financing its portion, and an explanation as to what is required from the county if we're to meet those original goals. If you wouldn't mind doing that.
Through the chair to you, Mayor Davis, thank you very much for the question. So there has been substantial cost increases that have happened over time to a lot of these units. So as you can see on table 4, which is on page 10, we've got the cost of Marlene Ave, which was built 30 units at a total cost of $5.2 million. The average cost per unit on that was $174,427. We also completed another in the city, 4 units at 18 Sturton Ave. The total cost of that building was $470,230, and the average cost per unit on that build was $117,557. When we move along further into our unit affordable housing unit development update, the next one is 177 Colburn Street, where we were able to build 26 units. The total cost of this was $6,323,920. The average cost per unit here has now increased to $243,228, well above where we started through from our Marlene Ave build. When we move along to our most recent completion, which is Lucy Marco Place, we've got 41 units, which is a total cost of $11,058,009. And now you can see the average total cost per unit has increased to $269,708. Through these 4 builds, we were able to get some grants for that. So for the Marlene Ave, we were able to secure $40,000 worth of grants. For 18 Sturton, we were able to secure $20,000 worth of grants. For 177 Colburn Street, we secured a $3.1 million grant, which substantially helped with our financing. And then for Lucy Marco Place, we've got $669,794 worth of grants. We've also had to sell some city assets in order to pay for the city's share of these. So we've got the 282 Stanley Street proceeds. We allocated a portion of the amount that we got from there in the amount of $4.4 million. And then other city assets, which was a sale of an administrative building, contributed another $2.9 million towards this. The city also had some reserves in affordable housing that was already set aside for some of these builds. We put in $3.1 million. And then development charges, before they were removed through Bill 23, we still had some balances that were left in those development charge reserves. So we were able to put just over $2 million into 177 Colburn Street, and another $2.3 million into Lucy Marco Place. Lastly,
Can I stop you there for a minute, Judy?
Yes.
So the 101 units have been constructed. What was the county's contribution?
So no county contribution on any of those ones. This is all city contributions for these 101 units.
All right. So the buildings that have been done to date, 100% of that has been financed by the county, probably by the city. Correct?
Mayor Davis, sorry to interrupt you, but you're over your time, so we'll let staff continue, and then I'll add you for another speaking opportunity.
Please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. So lastly, as noted, we did have some non-tax supported debentures. So these are debentures that will actually be funded through the rents that come through from these units. So it's not actually impacting the tax base. If you wanted to move on to table 5, we've got 389 West Street and 6, we've got Shellard Lane build. So we've got on 389 West Street, that's the Fox Ridge, planning right now from the first phase of 43 units at a total cost of $11.1 million. So as you can see, the average cost per unit here is $266,778. The Shellard Lane build that's going out in the new area out there of 70 units, total cost there is anticipated to be $25.3 million, which is an average cost now of $361,429, which is just showing the cost increases of development over time. Again, we were allowed to, or we were able to secure some grants for 389 West Street. We got Building Faster funds. We were allowed to allocate just over $3 million towards that in grants. And Shellard Lane has got 200,000. Again, we've had to use part of the 282 Stanley Street reserves to pay for these two builds. So $9 million coming from there, another $19 million coming from city reserves, and then again, non-tax supported debentures, which are going allocated towards Shellard Lane. And to answer the mayor's question, all of this is 100% funded from the city.
Thank you. And before we go back to Mayor Davis, are there any first-time speakers on this item? Okay, Councillor Oakley, go ahead.
Thank you. If I could just direct a question towards staff, would my understanding here be correct that essentially what we have going on here is two parallel agreements where we have an agreement to hit a fixed number of units between the city and the county, and we have another parallel agreement that says that the county is going to pay X number of dollars, which is the 15 million. And at the time, those two numbers would have coincided to make sense. And now, because of inflationary pressures on the cost of building housing, that they're now broadly incompatible.
Through the chair, the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter, go ahead, please.
Yes, rather than argue over who pays what, could we actually have those agreements that have been signed by both the county and the city, those two agreements, circulated to all members of the Social Services Committee, please, so we can review it for ourselves?
Through the chair, we can do that, certainly.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, just to be clear, no argument here. We're just trying to clarify what the facts are. So if I could just go back, Judy, to you were just finishing off very quickly there about what it is the city has to do to complete the construction of the targeted number of units for the city. And is that plan? Is there a financing plan for that?
Through the chair to you, Mayor Davis, there is a financing plan. So we still have 150 units left that the city needs to construct. So we are building in some assumptions, assuming that we will get some grants. Again, assuming that all of these units will be able to support some level of debentures that can be paid for from the excess revenues from rents.
Okay.
And then we are also having to sell some city assets in order to finish paying for ours because we do not have enough money in reserves.
So to be clear, the city is not taking the position that it is taking the position that we're going to build the target number of units assigned to us, even though costs have increased and even though the amount that we're going to have to allocate as a city is far greater than what we thought it was going to be 3-4 years ago. Is that correct?
Through the chair to you, Mayor Davis. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So can you take us through table 6? So now this talks about the county of Brand. I think it's table 6 and 7. I guess it starts in table 7. So can you finish your presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
And take us through those tables.
So for table 7, so this is the County of Brant in progress units. So right now they are making their way through the Trillium Way build, which has 49 units in it. The total cost of this is anticipated to be $14.5 million, which is an average cost per unit of $295,918. So they were successful in some grants for this as well too. We've got $340,000 that came from SSRF funding, another $2.4 million that came from a federal grant, and $200,000 of OPI funding that we were able to apply to this as well. So the county contribution required for this will be just over $11.4 million to finish off the total financing. And this is all being contributed through the county. So when we look at what would be remaining, so looking at the population split, there's 142 units. If we were to look at how many were to be constructed through the Mayor's Housing Task Force, they would be responsible for 142 units. So they've got the 49 in progress right now, which leaves another 93. Looking at an average cost per unit of $350,000 per unit, we estimate that that would be another $32.4 million that would be needed in order to construct these last 93 units. Again, using the same assumptions that we use for the city, that we would be successful of obtaining 20% grant allocations, gets us $6.4 million. The remainder of the county contribution from the original agreement of the $15.125 million, less what's being allocated to Trillium Way, leaves another $3.675 million that they've already committed to, which then would leave an additional $22.2 million of additional county contribution if they were to fund these full 93 units.
Okay, so the similar number, you already gave that to us for the city. There's a large shortfall on the original estimate from 3 years ago. We do have a financing plan. We're committed to building the number of units that were allocated to us and which we pledged to build. I would say to the county members, what's the plan in the county?
Mayor Davis, sorry, you've run out of time.
The question is still there. Looking forward to an answer.
So we can still have the answer for that final question though. Thank you.
I'll make a comment if I may, Madam Chair, that we are just going into our budget.
Sorry, I just wanted to hear the answer for staff for that final question, and then you definitely go ahead after that. Thank you.
Well, through the chair, I think the question was actually directed to the county representatives from the mayor, not to staff. So
yeah, Michael can answer it for me if he wants to, but that's all right. Just to say that we're just entering into our budgeting round now, and this is going to be a factor that will play into it. I don't know the answer. I don't know exactly how we will finance it, but I think the rationale that Mayor Davis presents is a reasonable one, at least as far as I would concern. I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole council. I'll speak on behalf of myself on that one. But we do have to face up to this challenge of where do we find $22.275 million, and that will be an interesting topic of conversation.
Councillor Oakley, we'll go to you next.
Through the chair, I just want to chip in as well as say that I think that is a reasonable question by Mayor Davis here. And I would be inclined to agree with Councillor Bell that I think certainly getting those, as Councillor Carpenter suggested, getting those agreements circulated amongst council and I think it's something we're going to have to look at, because obviously these two numbers are broadly incompatible. And, you know, if we all have the goal of building housing, which we do, we're going to have to reconcile that sooner rather than later.
Thank you. And Councillor Miller, you may go ahead.
Yeah, just I'll build on what was said. I don't think everyone at our table was fully aware of the magnitude of this, and obviously it's gotten harder with development charges being dropped from affordable housing. So it's a tall challenge, one that we need to maybe get our heads wrapped around a little bit better, and I recognize that. And when I pulled this for question, I had all those notes, everything that Mayor Davis asked, I have asked as well. Not of this committee, but of ourselves at the county. And we have taken some steps. We've built a reserve fund. It's never, reserve funds are never as big as you want them to be, but we are working on that. So, like I say, awareness is the first key. And again, I said at the start of my first comments earlier, I thought it was a very good report, A lot of good questions and a lot of good material in there from Mary. So we're going to get our heads wrapped around it and hopefully, well, I won't say hopefully, we will come up with a plan.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, just, it seems to me it's astounding that the cost to build an apartment unit is now up to $350,000 a unit. Is to staff, is that including the land costs?
Through the chair, no, it's not the cost of land. It's actually the construction of materials and, and labor that has increased significantly, especially through the pandemic. So over the last 3 years, we've seen costs increase quite exorbitantly.
So to me, it highlights another problem. If it's $350,000 to build a unit, then there's land costs on top of that, could be upwards of $100,000 to $200,000 a unit. That explains why there's very few of the approvals of apartment buildings for rental units and sellable units on the market or even being constructed now. I think we need to meet with the industry itself, find out what the building problems are, why these costs are so high, and what the issues are to actually get building started in the community, rental and housing units for sale. Because if this is what it costs us, the private sector cost must be add the land on top of that. That's why nothing's happening. So I think there's a bigger problem here than what it's costing us to build units. And it's costing us $350,000 a unit just for building. There's a problem there as well that we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Councillor McCreary, go ahead, please.
The cost to build 389 West Street, it's considerably lower than some of the other builds. I think I know the reason why. Can you elaborate on that?
Through the chair, Clayton Pay, I'm manager of housing development. It's because we're acquiring existing pre-built building. We have the infrastructure already in place, and the renovations that we're looking at doing are minor in comparison to a lot of other retrofit jobs. A lot of the space is already ready, and it's half the facility. We're not developing the whole facility. Yes.
Thank you. My mic was not on. Sometimes I do that. So with the West Street, you've looked at the drawings already. So are we maintaining a lot of the footprint with respect to the individual rooms? Is that your intention?
Through the chair, yes. We're maintaining majority of all the existing units.
Okay.
And what we're doing is adding washroom facilities for the most part and administrative space.
Yeah, because if I recall, the washrooms were not plentiful.
No, they were developed for old style long-term care, not private unit.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. And any other discussion on this item? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I realised the third time I've spoken. It's a more fundamental question. The numbers that we are talking about in terms of number of units were derived, or that number was derived back in 2020 or 2021. Does it stand the test of time, given that we need to think forward for some time? It's taken us 5 years to get to 200 and some units. Do we need to build more units? And if we do we need to be now thinking about how we manage that? That's a question, I think, to Mary, probably.
Through the chair, yeah, affordable housing is at a crisis right now. If people are aware, the AMO group has just released their study back on January 9th, and staff will be bringing a report to Social Services Committee. And affordable housing has been severely underfunded by various levels of government, and we need to build more housing in order to keep up with the economic constraints that people are experiencing. Social assistance rates have remained low. And just to give an example, the average market rent rate for a bachelor apartment in the city of Brantford is just over $900. A single person on Ontario Work Social Assistance only receives $733 per month. So right now, the availability of rental housing in comparison to what the social safety net provides does not equate.
Yeah, could I be more direct and then say, will staff bring forward a revised target for affordable housing for the city and the county?
Through the chair, the Brantford Brand Housing Stability Plan is due for renewal. The 10-year plan is expiring this year. So that will be a part of the review that we will be conducting and to determine whether or not more affordable housing needs to be built by the city.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, Mayor Davis, I believe you've already had 2 speaking opportunities and
Well, you allowed someone else to go through time.
yes, I did. You're right. I made a mistake there.
So double up your mistake.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Okay, I'm gonna just move on and sorry. If there's anybody else that hasn't used their speaking opportunities, yeah, okay. I'm gonna call the vote now.
Well, hang on. I've got a motion. My motion in the interest of equity and fairness is that we extend the number of your speaking periods from 2 to 3 for this particular item. Seeking a seconder.
All right, so your seconder is Councillor Bell, and I'll call the vote on that. Oh, any discussion on that? I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I want to commend you on your role in the chair today. I think it's highly unfair that certain individuals would try to take advantage of a rookie chair by trying to squeeze out a third unreasonable speaking opportunity. And I would recommend that committee members support the chair and deny that opportunity to speak a third time, because who knows what would happen next meeting? Would the mayor want to speak 4 times, perhaps, maybe 5?
Well, do I get to say anything?
Hold on, I think Councillor Sikoli, did you have your hand up?
Councillor McCurry took all my words, so I'm just gonna let that linger there for everyone's consideration.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Davis.
Well, all I'm doing is I realize that you allowed Councillor Bell a third time, and really, I don't really want to say anything. I got a couple of questions that I think might be of interest to the committee. So I'm hoping that the same courtesy will be extended to me.
Is there anybody opposed at this time to allowing a third speaking opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna go to a recorded vote. And go ahead, yeah.
Mayor Davis? Did he say yes? Okay. Councillor Sikoli?
No.
Councillor Celeste?
Yes.
Councillor McCurry?
I have had my way with the mayor, but I will support his motion.
Councillor Carpenter?
No.
Councillor Samwell? Mayor Bailey?
No.
Councillor Bell?
Yes.
Councillor Oakley?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor House?
Yes.
And Councillor Garneau? And that carries.
All right, so with that, go ahead, Mayor Davis.
I'll try and keep it short. I don't want to thank members. But so my question to staff, kind of following Councilman Curry's questions about the West Street property. So you've got 3 phases. Phase 1 is 43 units, phase 2 is 33 units, phase 3 is 50 units. That dollar amount that's in there in table 6, is that the estimate for what? Phase 2 or phase 1?
Through the chair to you, Mayor Davis, do you mean the amounts in table 5, the 389 West Street, the 43 units? Or table 6, where we're talking about the remaining 150 units that need to be built?
Well, it was table 1 and table 2. Table 1 and table 2, that's the overview, right? And in the overview, you mentioned that staff has said that there's phase 1, 39 West, that's 43, that's in the planning. There's phase 2, which is going to be 33 units. And then phase 3, way out in 2028, that's going to be 50 units. Right. So my question.
Sorry, go ahead.
So my question is, will that then build out 389 West Street to what you're able to do with the current building that currently exists there?
Through the chair. So on table 1, the 43 units, that's the 11 million that has been committed to the rehabilitation of phase 1 for 389 West Street. Phase 2, we have not, that's going to be part of the overall tables that the Director of Finance has put together. So table 6 includes the costs for phase 2 and phase 3 of 389 West Street.
All right, because I'll do it simply this way. The current building as it exists, we're going to be renovating and upgrading it. How many units are you going to be able to build in the current unit before you have to start building new on that site?
So through the chair, we're currently estimating that we can build approximately, or just over 110 units in phase 1 and phase 2. So that will be the rehabilitation of the older part of 389 West Street, and then the newer part of 389 West Street. Phase 3 will see new development on the remaining property at 389.
Right, and so that'll be at a higher per unit price because you'll be building new, right?
Through the chair, that is what we are anticipating, yes.
Yeah, okay. My last question for you is, and this is celebratory, that between the city and the county, I think we've done a fantastic job to date. How does what we have done together, and keep in mind the Trillium Way build, how does that compare to what other municipalities have done over the last 3 to 4 years?
So through the chair, in just the information that staff have available, we're probably one of the only service managers that is developing municipally developed units. A lot of the other municipalities that are opening new affordable housing, it's actually being developed by nonprofits in their areas.
Right. So would you say that we're almost in some ways leading the way in Ontario for municipal builds?
Through the chair, yes.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for committee for allowing me the third time.
Thank you. And Councillor Carpenter, go ahead for your third time.
Just quickly, Mary, would you please provide all the information with 389 West Street, the build, the cost, the time frame, the intention to the Ward 4 councillors, so we are aware of exactly what's going on with that property within our ward? Thank you very much.
Yeah, through the chair, the intention of staff is to actually bring a very fulsome report forward to Social Services Committee before we start any construction. The agreement of purchase and sale should be closing in the summer of 2025.
Yeah, the ward councils would like to be aware of all that.
Councillor McCurry, go ahead, please.
Sorry to create more work for you in the CC line, but could you also send that to Greg and I? We happen to be across the street.
Through the chair, no problem.
All right, if there's no further speaking to this item, I'm going to call the vote. Seeing none, let's call the vote.
All those in favor of item 6.3, 2024 annual update on housing development? Carried, thank you.
All right, with that, there's no resolutions, no notices of motions, and we are adjourned. Thank you. The meeting of the Social Services Committee has now adjourned, and we will proceed with the Brantford Brant Local Corporation of Directors meeting. All right, with that, the roll has been taken. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Right, seeing none, there are no presentations. Are there any items that anybody would like separated for discussion purposes? Counselor Miller.
4.1.
Okay. So I just need a mover and seconder for anything not separated to be placed on the floor for consideration. Yep, so Counselor Sicoli and Counselor McCurry.
The item subject to the vote is item 5.1, the third quarter report, and 5.2, the minutes from September 4th. All those in favor? Carried, thank you.
All right, and moving along, then we'll discuss the items that are separated for discussion. And Counselor Miller, you asked for 4.1 to be separated, so you may go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize if I'm diving in the weeds a bit deep here on this one, but the capital repairs at 359 Darling Street, does that include the removal of the existing attic insulation?
Through the chair, yes, it will be the entire attic material, all ducting, all insulation, any vapor barriers and replacement of thereof.
Okay, thank you. The reason I'm asking is because these units were built in 1968. In 1968, they did not use vapor barriers between the living space and the attic. So all I'm saying is, when the attic insulation is removed, that is a rare opportune time to do air sealing between the living space and the attic space. For example, you caulk around any penetrations going into the attic. And my question is, do you know if that air sealing between living and attic spaces is part of the contract?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It will be part of the contract. The increase in funding for this is to do a more fulsome renovation of it. We're looking at removing the entire roof structure so we can do those air vapor barriers at a easier and more successful rate. Right now, the pitch of the roof is so low that to get people in there to do a correct job is quite difficult. And we've had recommendations from contractors that removing the roof will be a lot easier for them to do all the work.
Okay, and I know it's a bit of a, like you say, deep dive into the weeds, but I've seen rehabilitations go awry where it's been done. They haven't fixed the original problem, and then it's moldy again 3 years later. So I don't want to see that. So I'll trust that you guys have done it properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll call the question.
All those in favor of item 4.1, increase to capital budget for capital repairs at 359 Darling Street? Oh. And that carries, thank you.
All right, thank you. So at this time, there are no resolutions, no notices of motion. So this meeting is adjourned. The meeting of the Brantford Brant Local Housing Corporation Board of Directors is now adjourned, and we will proceed with the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting. Brant County Councilors, you may be excused if you wish. Thank you. All right, so I'll call to order the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
The roll has been taken.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest on anything on the agenda today? No. Seeing none, are there any items that the committee would like separated for discussion purposes? All right, so seeing none, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for everything not separated on the agenda. Okay, so I have Councillor Carpenter and Councillor McCurry. And Clerk, would you call the vote, please?
The item subject to the vote is 5.1, the third quarter report, and 5.2, the minutes from September 4th. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
All right, and with that, there are no resolutions, no notices of motions. So the meeting of the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Corporate Housing Corporation Board of Directors is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.